Alright, it's the Buster here and we are back with Stormgate patch notes. This time it's patch 0.4.1, so not actually a hotfix. It's an actual version patch, so that's cool. We were expecting a balanced hotfix after the previous 0.4 update, and I'm very curious to see what kind of things they end up changing. Of course, the basic issue was that Celestial ended up way too strong once again, so that should be getting scaled back, but not sure how. And of course, there might be changes to other factions as well, so let's go through it, and I'll give my informed view as an Infernal player on how the changes are looking. So, welcome to Stormgate patch 0.4.1. This update focuses on improving the overall player experience with a solid round of bug fixes, quality of life improvements, and key balance adjustments across all factions. We've addressed a quirky fog of war issue tied to hardware differences, fine-tuned some audio annoyances, and squashed a few persistent AAA bugs. On the balance front, expect noticeable shifts in early game pacing, refined unit tuning, and reworked abilities that should open up fresh strategic options across the board. That sounds like it's gonna be more than just like number changes. Reworked abilities sounds like a pretty big one, so let's see. Bug fixes. General fixed an issue where fog of war would sometimes appear unusually dark, especially under certain hardware configurations. I did notice that fog of war looked very dark, but I'm not sure if that was the actual bug or just that's something else. Fixed an early game multiplayer design that could occur during the early stage of the match. Okay. Versus fixed an issue where Lance and Exos were not receiving the intended 20% health when they increased in veterancy. Oh, they received more. I was like, oh, so they had less hit points? No, they actually had more. It was probably based on their earlier hit points, I would guess. Fixed an issue where Longshock module gave Argent higher damage bonus than intended versus heavy units. I see. Brutes got 20% quieter. No, just their attacks, okay. Construction complete announced where voiceover is now properly tied to the volume mixer, so I guess it was another jump scare voice. Replays. Fixed an issue where the game would sometimes crash when attempting to launch a replay from a URL. Well, that sounds like a good fix. Replays will no longer desync when you skip back to the start of a replay file. That's also very welcome. And then we get to balance. Hey Gators, we've been generally pleased with the results of the last patch where we made large changes to unit movement speeds, time to kill, and the overall economy. After reviewing the initial outcomes, we are making targeted adjustments to refine those changes. Our primary focus will be the economy, with the introduction of charges. Celestials currently enjoy a significantly stronger economy, with Vanguard trailing behind and Infernal slightly further still. We'll be tuning various aspects of all three economies to bring them more closely in line with one another. We're also looking to make the Brute's new Infernal Fury ability more consistent alongside addressing some additional player feedback. Okay. All faction starting resource decreased from 300 Luminite to 150 Luminite. It was 150 in the previous patch, I believe, and I think this overall a very nice change. It was just kind of too much to be able to like slap around 3 production facilities if you want, for example. Vanguard. Command post starts with 3 charges servos. Isn't this a buff to Vanguard ability? They make an expansion, they can immediately start with 3 workers. Interesting. Servo recharge time increased from 23 to 25 seconds. Infernal shrine cost decreased from 350 to 300. Very interesting. And shrine build time decreased a whopping 5 seconds from 8 seconds to 35 seconds. Well, I'll take it, I guess. And shrines also start with 3 charge beams. Okay. So in terms of this particular change between Infernal and Vanguard, it's of course better for Vanguard players getting the 3 charges because their build time of their workers is, or charge time of their workers is higher compared to Infernal. So this will benefit them more. Animus starting out increased from 0 to 25. I had not even considered this option, but that's very nice because you will be able to actually make an effigy at the start for creeping now. Oh, and summon effigy animus cost decreased from 10 to 7. Thank you. The increase to 10 was so brutal. So now you can actually make effigies again. Hellspawn Researchers now currently states it restores 3 charges on Infernal production structure. It is not intended to restore all 5 in charges on a shrine. And in fact, it was not doing that, but people expected it does because it said all charges before. And you can no longer use Hellspawn Resources to recharge Flame Dragon production. Alright, fair enough. Shroudstone Manifestation energy cost decreased from 75 back to 50. And with the higher Animus cost, this actually means that Shroudstone Manifestation will be more accessible in the early game, because you will only need 25 more Animus used for the first time, so that's gonna be actually useful against rushes. And it's interesting that they are making a buff against early game rush defense, because that's certainly been something that they have been nerfing consistently throughout all the patches. This is like the first time it gets buffed. Instead, Shroudstone Manifestation cooldown increased from 120 seconds to 150 seconds. This is like whatever. You may need to use it like once, but it's not something that's spam anyway. Fiends are now immune to Curse. This is nice for Infernal versus Infernal, where it was kind of silly that Fiends would spawn a Phantom which is almost the same as a slightly lower hit point Fiend. When brutes are charging with Infernal Fury, movement speed bonus increases from 100 to 200%. That's a very fast charge now. While brutes are charging with Infernal Fury, attack speed is now increased by the 400%. This only affects the weapon animation on the first attack. I guess there was a problem where they would like catch up to the enemy, but they won't actually be able to hit it because the attack is too slow against a moving enemy. So this is just fixing that. Brute weapon slop range increased from 1.5 to 3. I think this is like the tracking of the hit if they are hitting an enemy that's running away. I could be mistaken, but I think that's what it refers to. And brute damage increased from 24 to 26. Gaunt health increased from 65 to 75. Okay, so we are seeing some nice tier 1 buffs here. Magmadon damage increased. Oh yeah, okay. From 30 plus 20 versus heavy to 40 plus 25 versus heavy. Sure, like Magmadon basic damage hasn't really been doing much. So any increase to it is nice. And against specifically heavy units it's gonna be somewhat better. Like 65 damage is still not a lot against like actual higher tech units, but against something like Lancer, for example, or a Brute, it's gonna do a lot more damage. Magmadon trample damage decreased from 100 plus 80 versus heavy to 100 plus 50 versus heavy. Okay, yeah, I think that's kind of fine. I don't think it should be too strong, it's still very strong with stance change. Oh, Hellborn weapon range increased from 8 to 10. That is actually kinda crazy. Like Hellborn, even with the low range, had crazy high damage. With longer range, it's still not massive range, but still it's a longer range. They will be able to use that a lot more, so Hellborn was already easily my favorite unit in the new patch, and this makes them a lot better. Hexen cost changed from 175 to 75 and 100. Interesting, making it more of like a Therium sink. I guess that makes sense. And Weaver cost decreased from 125 to 200, 225, 175. I mean, Weaver is a very bad unit, so decreasing the cost is nice, although it's a very minor difference. And Spriggan range increased from 3 to 4. Again, it used to be 4 in the previous patch, I'm quite sure. So that's all for Infernal changes. I'm actually surprised that this is like all buffs apart from like this fix to Flame Dragon production. This is like, even though previous patch made massive nerfs to Infernal, this is probably still like the single biggest buff patch to Infernal that I've ever seen, and that's kind of surprising. Should be pretty nice changes. I hope they don't end up too much, but let's see what the other factions got. Celestials. Collection array build time increased by 10 seconds from 100 to 110 seconds. And collection array morph time from morph cores increased from 7 to 80 seconds, so a fair bit slower expanding. And Prism recharge time increased from 75 to 90 seconds. Prime structure removed from Celestial production structures. if I understand this change correctly, this is actually massive. Because, if I'm not mistaken, what Prime Structure did was that you can basically change all of your production to come from a single structure. So just removing this basically kills all Celestial proxies. Well, not all of them, but you will need to like make all of your buildings actually on the front line instead of making production back home and just making one frontline production facility, and suddenly all of your production will be coming out of that. So this is a massive difference for like the first time in actually nerfing Celestial proxies, which has been a persistent issue in the game since forever. So that is very interesting. I might understand this wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of a different thing and it wasn't the Prime Structure, what it actually does. But if it's that, then this is really big. The long shot module upgrade now increases range by +2 down from +3. This is for Argents, I believe, and I don't know if Argents really need a nerf, but okay, let's keep going. After creating the Blaze of Light upgrade, they will no longer be able to roll after taking fatal damage before exploding. Okay, so we also got a nerf to Kree. And Vector anti-air damage decreased from 8+8 versus light to 8+6 versus light. So Vectors won't be quite as deadly against Gaunts, for example. Seraphim health decreased by 15 from 180 to 165. So that also makes Seraphim a bit easier to fight with Gaunts, for example. And Archangel health decreased from 750 to 650. And this is, I believe this is the first time ever that Archangel got a single nerf in the game. They have just been buffing Archangel. And also Avatar health bonus decreased from 400 to 300. So these two together is a fairly noticeable nerf to Archangels, which might make them less toxic to deal with. And that's actually the end of the patch notes. There was very little for Vanguard, big buffs for Infernal, and some reasonable nerfs to Celestial with basically no... I would like if there was like something they also buff for a race or faction when they nerf a lot of things. So there's like something that you can be like, okay, so we can focus more in that direction. In this case, it's just nerfs, and I don't think that's good in general. But overall, I think these things are in a good direction. With the combined nerf to Celestial, I hope Infernal doesn't end up too strong. It's probably not the case considering the scale of the nerfs in the previous patch, but something to keep an eye out for. We'll see. Probably next patch is gonna be some big nerfs for Infernal again. But yeah, overall a pretty good patch. As an Infernal player, I'm obviously happy for it. We are the winners in this specific patch for sure. Like, no contest about that. And that's all for now. I won't be playing for a few hours because I'll be out of town. But you can usually watch me live on twitch.tv/flepaster. And I hope you all enjoy patch 0.4.1. Looking forward to more cool things in Stormgate. For now, peace out.